Good morning, it's Albert. You have a very interesting background, so can you please begin by taking us through your background and how you got to be CMO of Instant Natural?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ross. So I've spent 17 years mostly within the consumer product space, working for large CPG brands. I started my career at P&G and did a tour through other organizations like L'Oreal, Unilever, and Kimberly-Clark. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I've really been focused on e-commerce. My last couple of roles at Kimberly-Clark were managing e-commerce businesses on both the B2B side of the house as well as the consumer side of the house. I decided to join Instant Natural a couple years ago really to help that company through a transformation, which was really about helping it scale in other online marketplaces.
Okay, but it started on Amazon, correct? So can you tell us a little bit about the history of Instant Natural and how it got to be a more omni-channel brand through your work, largely,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. So Instant Natural was a business that was born online, as you mentioned, about 5 years ago as a direct-to-consumer business and a very successful Amazon business. And so my role when I came in was really to help that business think about how to scale and how to really build an omni-channel strategy in other channels. And so part of that was also Amazon, really thinking about Amazon and international, but also scaling to other marketplaces that have since launched at Jet and Walmart and iHerb and a range of other channels. And so it had been a lot of work, thinking about things like supply and assortment, but has been a fun journey nonetheless, for sure.
So when you joined as CMO, was it your decision to move into omnichannel, or was that something that was directed to you as part of joining?
Yeah, my job was to think about new revenue opportunities for the business, how to ultimately, scale the business. In some contexts, that's, what things we do as far as innovation with the assortment, but a huge opportunity for the business, as you can imagine, really just being a direct-to-consumer and Amazon-only business. There are tons of channel opportunities. I think, a bit of context as far as, what's happening in the beauty category, the fast-moving consumables category within beauty. There's a lot of competition. There is a lot of SKUs and innovation introduced every year, and some folks, my friends at Ulta and Sephora, might not like this, but Amazon is the largest online beauty merchant, and so it presented a lot of opportunity both on Amazon as well as taking that learning to really be successful in other channels for sure.
But would you say that the backbone is still Amazon for Instant Natural in terms of?
It is.
Okay.
As the largest online channel, it is, and I'll share some slides and some insights as to why the business has been successful there and how we've driven discoverability there.
Great. So before we do that, can you talk a little bit about Amazon's retail platform and how it's kind of evolved since Instant Natural first joined in 2013?
Yeah. So does anyone in here not shop at Amazon? Has anyone not bought anything on Amazon in the last 60 days? Okay, so everyone knows Amazon, right? For context, just a little bit of level setting, does anyone currently sell any of their products as a brand or vendor on Amazon? Okay, a couple folks. So just, in its simplest format, there's two ways to sell on Amazon, and I'm simplifying it. There's, sort of a first-party vendor relationship. It's sort of like a wholesale relationship, and then there's a marketplace. Instant Natural is on Amazon's marketplace. We have explored the vendor-owned relationship in several contexts, but for lots of reasons we can talk about over a drink, that doesn't necessarily work for us. So you asked about how things have changed over the last several years. I guarantee, other than maybe folks seeing that I was going to be on stage with you, you guys have not heard of Instant Natural, right? But the landscape, you probably know some of these brands, right? So you recognize any of these brands? So the biggest change that's happened on the platform is just the explosion of the sellers, the brands that are on the platform, and it's been monumental. It's been out of control. So that's one of the biggest changes. The other big change, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, are just really some of the paid features, marketing features that are available to brands. I think, when you look at the platform, and we'll talk a little bit about insights around, who the Amazon shopper is. I mentioned you'd probably not heard of Instant Natural, but you've heard of things that Instant Natural offers, things like vitamin C products, hyaluronic acid products, SPF products, things that I'm sure many of you use that are in your bathrooms today. And so this is a consumer or a shopper that ultimately is looking for ingredients and problems and solutions and not necessarily shopping for brands. And so it's all about winning and discoverability as you're helping intercept her as she's looking to find solutions, things that ultimately work for her.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk a little bit about advertising on Amazon. What paid placements are there, and how have the advertising platforms and tools kind of evolved, especially most recently?
Yeah, there's sponsored product ads, there's headline ads, there's paid product ads, and one of the things that's really exciting, and I think we've talked about it this week in a couple contexts, there's enhanced retargeting capabilities that will continue to evolve on the platform. And so there's a range of tools that we as a business have explored and we manage in-house that have been very, very successful for us for sure in channel.
Let's talk a little bit about the Amazon consumer. How would you say the Amazon consumer differs from other types of consumers?
Yeah. So, the context at the top of this conversation, you're talking to someone who started their career sort of as a brand builder, all about brands, right? I started my career at P&G, and it's all about brand. And I think, brands still matter. I'm not going to walk away from that, but I think it's a new story as to how you build brands in the context of an online digital marketplace. But, the thing that's disruptive and fun for smaller businesses like Instant Natural or any of these competitors, which are not endemic large brands, many of them are just online-only brands, that Amazon consumer is our best customer, and she is one that, again, is not leading with brand. So it is not brand-based search. It is, problem solution. Give me 1 second. I'm going to actually, I have a couple exhibits for you guys. So she's searching for, a range of things that might be ingredients, things that might be convenience-based, things that might be format and product type-based. And so she's not searching for Instant Natural because several dozen folks in this room have never heard of it, of that brand. But she's searching for, a specific problem or a moment that's going to be important to her.
And what have you found to be the chief considerations that she makes before making a purchasing decision? Is it price? Is it, making you go backwards, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay.
No, I put together these exhibits, and we're going to sort of use them as we talk through. But,
okay.
There are a range of things that are going to, add to discoverability. But, it's obviously it's those brands that are crystal clear about, offering the solutions that are important to me as I'm searching for that. And so our titles, obviously, no brainer, are incredibly important. Price and value is hugely important, and these are all things that, in many contexts, add to, velocity and driving discoverability through the algorithm on the platform, and then all the things that are important around user-generated content. So the ratings and reviews. So we live and die by our ratings and reviews, and you'll see that across the assortment. We've worked to really deliver an end-to-end powerful customer experience that really drives those to be exceptional. Hopefully across the assortment, and so that type of content, and then our image deck. So really, how do you tell a very strong, powerful brand story? And we'll sort of step through an example of that with your image deck beyond just a 6-sided carton, right? To ultimately tell your story as to who you are, who is it for, and how it works for me.
So let's talk about how you foster ratings and reviews. How do you get your customers to want to review your products?
Yeah. So the interesting thing about being an online-only business, and I talk a lot about this, is we would love if consumers would just like our products because they're amazing products, right? But the reality is lots of other things come into consideration of that, and we all know that. Every single touch point, customer service, what's your fulfillment approach? Did it arrive on time? Is it the right solution that I ordered or I thought I ordered? And so making sure that it's crystal clear that she knows what she's getting, making sure that we service her if she has a solution or a complaint, and the customer is always right. I mean, there's nothing that we'll do beyond giving a customer a free product or making sure that we take care of her needs or whatever. But it's customer engagement to the max, and so it's all of those things that allow us to deliver a flawless experience at every touch point. That's really, really important to ultimately driving that.
Is that how you drive better rankings and discoverability? Is it through ratings and reviews, or is that just one piece?
That's one piece of it.
Okay.
That's one piece of it. The other elements are, as I mentioned, great content, things that are ultimately really important. But an example, here, just to showcase for you guys and how we've told our story with our image deck, is ultimately, servicing her with, what is the package? There's certain requirements and brand standards for ultimately what you show, right? Taking her through ultimately how you use the product, how it works for me, and then there's certain credentials that are important to her that we've tested and learned, things like not tested on animals, made in the USA, and so it's ratings and reviews, it's things that ultimately that drive velocity, it's exceptional content for sure.
So piggybacking on ratings and reviews, you have an influencer marketing strategy, right? And can you talk about how those things tie together?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a lot of the things that we're doing, just for disclaimer, from an investment standpoint, one of the things that you and I talked about, well, where do we spend our money? As an endemic online brand and one that's only in a few channels, it's really things that we're doing in channel to engage the shopper, right? And so there's things that we definitely do in channel to engage influencers, and there's things that we do out of channel. And so obviously there's great affiliate programs. We work with influencers in-house. We don't work with an agency to do that. Influencers across a range of different categories, so not just beauty influencers, but health and wellness influencers, moms as an example, as well, to really support both launching our products, driving great content around our products, and ultimately engaging consumers to buy our products.
Okay, how do you become an Instant Natural influencer?
How do you become an Instant Natural influencer? Well, that's a good question. I guess one.
And what does the program entail? And
Yeah, I think at a high level, just really a couple of things. I think one, you have to have a certain level of credential and cachet in sort of what you're doing, regardless. And two, Instant Natural is, I should have said this, it's not obvious. It's a natural or an organic based brand. Those are the solutions it offer, and so that has to fit with your content, your narrative, and who you are. And then you get in touch with Shayna, the head of comms.
Okay, so it's kind of tied to your CRM program, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I mean, the way we use influencers are, again, really two contexts. One, to really support, sort of the viral aspect and launching of our products. The second aspect is really to support creating content. And it's not just the user-generated content. I mean, we work with influencers to do things like tutorials and reviews, engage with consumers in consultations. There are estheticians on staff that we work with influencers to create content. So if you look across the different channels for the brand, you'll see some of that content and how we're working with influencers.
Mm-hmm. But do they write ratings and reviews for you on platforms like Amazon?
Well, they can, but that's not at scale. That's not at scale. So that's not the primary reason, but at scale is really getting your everyday consumer that's buying the product to ultimately come back, review it, and close that loop.
Okay. So you mentioned that you don't work with an agency. Do you work with any third parties with your Amazon marketing at all, or?
Nope, it's all in house, but this is absolutely organic. I want to give a shout out to the Ken Shu folks and Oren and his team, because I'm absolutely a huge fan of their platform and what they offer for brands in managing their investment on the platform, as well as really a backbone for things that they can learn and do off platform as well.
Great. So what have you learned about your customers through your Amazon marketing that you can apply to other marketplaces?
Yeah. So a lot of the things that are important to Amazon are relevant for other marketplaces as well. I think the great thing about being successful on Amazon, at least from my experience, is if you can be viable on Amazon and figure out how to build a sustainable business there, you can most likely be successful in other marketplaces. And so a lot of the same principles hold true. And so here's just a simple PDP, product detail page example from iHerb, which is one of Instant Natural's also largest merchants. And this is a first party owned wholesale relationship. But similarly, building in titles that are very problem solution focused. Pricing, this slide doesn't necessarily give that context, but pricing the landscape and having the right context, having great ratings and reviews, as well as having a very strong image deck that's really clear in telling your story. So a lot of those principles still hold true in how you can build success in other marketplaces. And being able to translate that well has been a very powerful journey for the brand. But I will say, a lot of the same investment opportunities that exist today on Amazon aren't necessarily in place on other channels, right? And so we certainly work with other platforms like Criteo and Hook Logic to support, customer acquisition on sales and other channels, but there's not as sophisticated a tools available. There are very high-touch programs, as you can imagine. There's shopper marketing programs with many of these merchants, Lucky Vitamin, iHerb. They all have shopper programs that honestly don't have a lot of transparency around how they're working for you. But nonetheless, they're available for brands to utilize, and they're things that we definitely do for sure.
Can you, so you can deploy an Amazon strategy to other marketplaces, you just said that, but how important are other marketplaces? I mean, Amazon seems to be the shining, the best one or whatever, but are the other marketplaces equally as important if you add them together, or?
Yeah, I think It depends on the sector, right?
Depends on the product.
It depends on the sector. I mean, we have, I think folks from Chewy here, which is, massive within the pet space. So it depends on the sector. Within, the beauty sector, Amazon is hugely important, especially if you're going to play in mass beauty, and they're becoming more important at other price points and experiences. But it depends on the sector. And so, iHerb, for example, I don't know how many of you are shoppers at iHerb, which is a very large online retailer in the vitamins, supplements, pets, as well as beauty space. They're a top 5 channel for Instant Natural. And so what was important was to ultimately build and diversify beyond having our feet held to the fire with the folks in Seattle, right? That was what was important. And so other marketplaces have absolutely proved viable and scalable and really massive for the business.
Okay, great. So I'd like to open it up to the floor now, see if there's any questions from the audience for Talbert. Or from Lori. I have a question. Lori has a question.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Did you begin to use videos, like how-to videos, along with your products?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of you can't see it, but most of the PDPs, the product detail pages, have video where those capabilities are available, and we can syndicate that content. But that video obviously also lives in social channels as well, and is a huge part of how we're engaging consumers on the journey, for sure.
Cool. A question in the back.
Hi, Jason Daly from Facebook. Did you ever have any brands where they were either performing particularly well, or you felt like hit a consumer need that you felt like you might want to take in a different area or strategy, maybe actually go retail or build the brand in a different way?
Yeah, I love that question, because a lot of what's happening from an assortment standpoint online is we're getting data and feedback that can help us understand what we should do with our assortment. And so I think one part of that question was really around, what are things that we might be doing to stay on top of what's happening. The second part that I think I understood was, have we considered, other channels? The reality is, for anyone that works on a retail business, online or off, brick and mortar is pretty tough, and you're talking to someone who's worked in retail for a very long time. And so my role has been to take capability that has been built in a direct-to-consumer and an Amazon business, and what is the other low-hanging fruit for where we can take the brand, the assortment. And so e-commerce has been the focus, but other channels, offline, et cetera, however that's blending, are certainly in the future for sure. Okay. Yeah, related to that, I wanted to just mention one more topic that Ross and I had mentioned. It's, I think, one of the exciting things that's happening is, sort of that's interrelated to that question from Jason is, if you sort of visualize the laundry aisle at Target, and what do you see? You might, see a sea of orange, right? And what brand do you think about?
Tide.
You think about Tide, right? And that's a very brand-led environment up until the point where you get to the shelf and you can read, if there's certain SKUs and things that are important to you. But one of the things that I wanted to mention that we have really worked to understand is, things like your packaging are also content, right? As you're engaging brands online. And so it's really important that you sort of flip the script as to how you think about designing for that first moment of truth, especially if you're an online-led business. And so one of the insights that, we've brought to bear and how we've executed is just really, redesigning the hierarchy around content, which is our packaging. And so if you remember, I said that Amazon consumer is very problem solution, ingredient driven. She's not brand led. And so the sea of red is less important necessarily, as I'll describe it to our category. And the hierarchy focused on ingredients, their ingredient name, what the product actually does is way more important. And so I think you see that a lot more with businesses that are getting it right and how they're actually designing for those online environments.
And how important are like images that accompany the listings on Amazon?
Yeah, I mean, huge. I mean, one of the biggest things that I did when I came in was really brought a lot of that content development capability in-house, so we could be a little bit more agile and do it faster, but completely redesigned the brand experience, the packaging, and all of our guidelines and things that ultimately translate to channels, our product listings, our catalog. And so hugely important to engaging our consumer, driving conversion, ultimately telling our unique story.
Okay. Laura, how much time do we have?
about up.
Are we done? Oh, we have 5 minutes? Okay. So would you say that you're targeting a much different consumer than a P&G is? Is that kind of what you were saying there?
So an online consumer, I think, the thing is, once again, that consumer is not necessarily brand led in what she's looking for. And these things might not, these things I think are obvious to everyone on the floor. The gap and the opportunity is how you actually execute that. And so it has huge implications with how you think about brand design, how you present your content, and ultimately how you talk to her. And so I think that's a big challenge for folks who come with a hat that is, I have a 100-year-old brand and that is the biggest asset I have. You have to figure out how to translate it to this environment. Yeah.
And do you find that many are any like competitors out there for Instant Natural?
Well,
do I do it well?
Well, I think for me being in the space, and I think it's very similar to many of the other consumable spaces folks on this floor are in. It's very obvious when you look at the platform that a lot of the larger endemic brands aren't figuring it out. So that's why you have smaller disruptive brands who are only a few years old who have figured out what a digital first environment looks like, and more specifically an Amazon first environment looks like, and being able to win. And so that's sort of the gap that Instant Natural specifically has been able to meet. And that's not unique to Instant Natural, but one that we've taken advantage of.
Yeah, and has thrived, right? Can you talk a little bit about the company's growth over the last, since you joined? When did you join, in 2015?
Earlier last year.
Oh, yeah. Last year, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, just from a channels perspective, going from 2 channels to over 12 and going to 7 countries, and so and being able to sell and have a retail business that is pretty dynamic. And so I mentioned Amazon Marketplace, but most all the other merchants, that's a direct retail or owned wholesale relationship. And so and that wasn't an easy thing to prove that you can be viable and sell in and ultimately be successful. It really demands different capability, from a supply standpoint. A lot of things that had us rip our guts open and rebuild to behave differently. I think, the biggest change for me has honestly been cultural. And so, I went from an environment where it was, at Fastest, it was, 12 months to planogram at, Walmart. I mean, we now work in in an environment where it's, 90 days, right? It's, introduce, items in the assortment and get it launched within the next quarter. And the merchants are moving that fast. And so it's exciting, it's fast, but it can be hectic at times.
Right. Go ahead, Lori.
If somebody is looking for an ingredient, how difficult is it? I realize it's only online sales, but how difficult is it to be selling through Target or Macy's or some big retailer?
So help me reframe the question. So if someone's looking for an ingredient,
sometimes the bigger retailers will sell online-only products. So how difficult it is to compete against the other brands on the site that may be selling inside the store and online if you're only selling online?
Okay. I think I got it. I think, a couple things. So Amazon is not the same as other retailers, right? I mean, other retailers, I'll stay within the beauty space, like Ulta and Sephora, have very specific and curated assortments that meet their standards. I mean, Amazon is everything in the kitchen sink, right? Anything can be on Amazon. So if you want the Wikipedia or the WebMD of beauty and you want to be able to find anything, compare any price and look up any rating review for any product, that's Amazon. So that's not the same experience as going to a Sephora and having a curated experience where you're expecting a certain brand experience and maybe some certain things of a certain price point, et cetera. And so, that's the one filter. The second thing is, with many of the merchants that we work with, and again, this isn't unusual, there are many formats for shopping and fulfilling that merchants are exploring, right? And so it's not just shopping online and having it sent to your home. It's shopping online and click and collect and going and picking up down the street, which Walmart's getting very big in, and there's probably other formats. There's tons of other formats as well, and so there's a bit of a blending of the two. But to your question around competing, I think Instant Natural specifically is squarely within that online shopper who is an endemic Amazon shopper, and we're on other platforms that replicate that a little bit, and not so much in the specialty beauty channels that would probably be hard for the business.
We got a question in the back.
How important has the advertising piece been to growing the business? And has that changed as you've gone into these other platforms or in-store or other things like that?
Yeah, it's so Instant Natural is online only, and the paid solutions are a huge part of driving discoverability on the platform. And so, you know, I'm a huge advocate of incorporating that in addition to great content, great customer engagement and customer servicing, and then layered on top of that some of the paid opportunities that can help amplify the brand for sure.
Can you talk about some of the newer opportunities in paid media on Amazon?
If I knew so much about them, I mean, I think, you know, there's additional enhanced retargeting capabilities that are in play. I think, you know, as a vendor on Amazon, I think, you know, they give us a little bit of insight into, you know, things that they have on their roadmap, but trust me, it's not like I have a 12 or 24 month roadmap as a brand. These are the features that they're launching and will be available to you. I oftentimes find out about them when the public does. So that's also one of the challenges in working with them. That's kind of their, you know, their curtain that they put up, I guess.
Yeah, so you got to be nimble. Okay. I think, yeah, I guess we're out of time. Telbert, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.